Once you have your pattern exactly how you like it, you're going to cut it out. And then you're going to pick out the fabric that you want for the body. So mine is going to be white. And so it's really easy because I can do the whole thing white. So once I have it cut out, I'm actually going to take some pins. And I'm going to carefully, without stabbing myself, I'm going to carefully pin my pattern to the fabric. And the other thing I didn't point out, I have 2 pieces of fabric because I need one for the front and the back. You don't just want one. And notice how my pattern fits really nicely on here. If it didn't fit, obviously, I would get a bigger piece of fabric. All right, now I have it all pinned, and before I move on, I want to show you something. I have the pins through both the piece of paper and then both pieces of fabric. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take a really good piece of scissors, or really good pair of scissors, and I'm gonna cut both pieces of fabric at the same time. I'm gonna pause that so I can do that. Okay, so once I have my shape all the way cut out, I'm gonna carefully unpin, I just wanna unpin the top. Ow, careful. And keep track of all these pins, don't just keep them on the table because they will go on the floor. Okay, so I'm gonna sew this inside out. So to me, and with my shape actually, it really doesn't matter which way my fabric is going, but if it does matter, you probably want to actually flip these pieces. So I would just turn them so that they're the opposite way. My bunny actually looks the same if I turn it both ways, so it really doesn't matter. All right, and then I'm just replacing those pins because I want both pieces of fabric to stay together. Now I'm just about ready to get my needle and thread. So I'm actually, just for the purpose of this video, I'm going to use a dark thread so that you're able to actually see it. But what I would want to do if I was doing my actual project is I would want to use a piece of thread that actually matched my fabric so that you really couldn't see it. And that's the same kind of concept with sewing it inside out, is that you really want to hide your stitches. All right, so you want to make a piece of thread. I know that I'm super zoomed in. My rule of thumb is I like to do about an arm's length, so I just pull it. And you can, I'm going to put it all in screen so you can see, so it's about that much. You can do a little bit more. I wouldn't do much less. And then tying, which is everybody's super favorite part, right? Well, and actually notice, again, I didn't really point out what I was doing. I actually double threaded it. This makes your thread a little bit stronger. All right, so I don't tie at this end of the needle. A lot of students do that. Don't do that. You tie at the very end, right? And I like to, it's kind of like tying a balloon where you loop your fingers and then you push the thread through that opening. And I like to do this several times so that I get a really nice knot. Once you have it where you want it, you kind of pull through and then pull this to the very end. If you have a really long tail, you might want to cut it off. The tail is just this excess. I'm just going to leave it because I do not really care. All right, and now's the fun part. You're going to do what's called a running stitch. If you had me in 6th grade and did a pillow, this is the same kind of stitch where it looks like a dotted line. So, and you want it to look like a dotted line. You don't want to have huge lines with huge gaps in between, and you want to get both sides. See, that's about what you want. One trick that I like to do that makes it super fast is I kind of fold it, pull my needle through, and I can do this a couple times. Then I pull my needle through and I just made like a bunch of stitches. Okay, so as you sew, you can start to take out your pins as you don't need them any longer because your thing is already staying together. And the other thing that I forgot to say is you don't want to sew too close to the edge. You want to give yourself about a 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch in. And you notice how my patterns aren't even completely lined up. That's totally fine because they're still sewed in a way that they're going to stay together. All right, now you want to sew. You're not going to get all the way around unless you're teeny tiny. You want to leave about 1.5 or to 2 inches at the end before you stop sewing. A lot of students, what they do is they sew till they have like nothing at the end. That's not good. You want to give yourself a little bit of slack so that you're able to tie. And this is what I like to do. I like to go back through that knot. If you get some of the fabric, that's totally okay too, because it actually makes your knot stronger. And then you go back through. Sorry, I was off screen there. You go back through, I'll do it again. And actually you do want to do like a double knot because it helps it stay together. All right. And then I go back carefully through that. All right, now I would cut it off. I would restring it and I would continue going all the way around. Once I got to about, I would probably leave maybe about this much. I would actually turn it inside out, stuff it, and then I would sew it the rest of the way shut. For my example, what I'm going to do is add the features, so the eye and the nose, for example. I'm going to add those with a different color once I've already stuffed my stuffed animal. But if you want to, some students like to sew those onto, you would just sew it onto the single side first, then you would turn it inside out, and then you would sew it together. So it's totally personal preference of how you want to do that. If you have something that has multiple colors, mine's like pretty easy because it's pretty much all white, including the tail. The only thing I'm going to make in color is the nose and the eye. But let's say that you have a character that But let's say that you have a character that has a different color ears, for example. What you could do is make those pieces separately out of a separate color of fabric and then sew those on at the end. Or you could, what could we do? There's a lot of different ways that you could do that, but you have to really think about that as part of your design. What I would do, actually, I think would be easier, especially since the ears are really small on this. If I wanted to make the ears a different color, I would probably sew it all together and then at the end sew a separate color on top of them to make them pink. So I think difficulty-wise, it is difficult to make the character multiple colors, but I think if you're creative, you can figure out how to do it.